Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our session on AI in critical infrastructure. I'm Vijay Vaitiswaran. I am the Global Energy and Climate Innovation Editor at The Economist, and my great pleasure today to be your immoderate moderator for our session. We are delighted to have such a full crowd and such a distinguished panel of experts. We're going to keep this lively, we're going to keep this interesting, we're going to keep it interactive. So please think about good questions and challenging questions. How many of you in the last year or two have been to an AI panel or conference? Hands up. Okay, exactly. So this is not going to be just any other AI panel going over ground you already know. I've challenged my speakers to make it interesting, to make it concrete, to go beyond what you've already heard and to bring some fresh perspectives. And I ask you to do the same with your questions as well. So that's what we're going to aspire to be the best AI session you've been to in a year and maybe even the year ahead. And in particular, we're going to go beyond some of the happy talk about how AI is going to change everything. Sure, it will. But to get into the clouds, you have to first start with your feet on the ground. And that's why we're here to talk about critical infrastructure. We know that the potential of AI is tremendous. For good, we'll talk about with an expert on AI for good in a moment, and I'll introduce my panelists so you know who they are. But I also want to talk about some of the blockers in infrastructure, in enabling, whether it's energy or whether it's minerals, other sorts of critical enablers that stand in the way, that need to be overcome, so that we can get from our feet on the ground up into the dream in the clouds, and to make sure that it's a good dream and that the outcome is good. So as I'd mentioned, we have, I think, three fantastic speakers. We have, from my left, we have Francesco Sciortino, who is CEO of Proxima Fusion. We have Fred Werner with the dual hats, both the ITU as well as AI for Good, and you'll be telling us a little bit more about, in particular, AI for Good when we come to you, Fred. And we have the Director General of the IAEA, Rafael Mariano Grossi, known to many of you, I'm sure, from television, if not in person as well in a room like this. So give them a nice round of applause to get them going. Terrific. Great. So why don't we start? No, I may start with you, Rafael, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Set the frame for us a little bit. And of course, and people may not know that people know you because your agency is something of a firefighter and a guardian in the hotspots of the world, but you actually have a wider remit, and including thinking about fusion and other applications in science, in energy, and so on. So from the vantage point that you have and the visibility of your organization globally, when you see this transformation that we're undergoing in entering the age of AI abundance, because AI has been with us for decades, of course,
Indeed.
Machine learning and other models, but this particular era really seems to be an inflection point, and it could produce a transformation as large as the Industrial Revolution itself. What do you see as some of the challenges to realizing that potential?
Well, the main one, thank you. I think it's a pleasure to be here with you and our friends here, and also with a group of people that know a lot about AI. So I would say that the essence of the involvement of the IAEA in this work is, I think, it is clear in the sense that it's about energy. We know about the goods. We know about the utility. We are big consumers of AI in my operation, in terms of the inspections I carry out, in terms of assisting vendors in their new design. I mean, AI, it's indispensable for us, as for everybody else, for every sector. But we all know and recognize that energy and the energy to sustain the effort at the current pace, and I would say at the potential pace of introduction of AI globally, would simply not be possible without nuclear energy. And it's not me saying it. Everybody who's been following developments over the past couple of years will recognize that the major AI companies are taking things in their own hands, so to speak. In terms of having come to the conclusion that without dependable energy, whichever plans we may have for AI are not going to be possible. So
Bring
this is
your
why,
own power is the new fashion, right?
Sorry?
Bring your own power, BYOP, is a
Yes.
turn of art in this industry.
Indeed. It's a little bit of that. So this is why hardly a week passes without, reading in The Economist or somewhere else that Google, Meta, whomever, OpenAI are signing contracts with nuclear vendors, companies that are being set up at the same time. Vendors that have not been in the business before, but are being created as we go along. So this is quite interesting in terms of market formation. For quite ambitious, very ambitious plans for, in the case of Google and Kairos, it's about 6 giga and things like this. I mean, we're talking about enormous amounts of nuclear energy.
No, that's an innovative SMR, small modular reactor company that they're investing in.
It's about nuclear in general and in particular SMRs. And these companies themselves investing in SMRs because for them, the money is not an issue. The issue is having access and quickly deployed technology that is going to be giving them the predictability that is needed, which is, of course, impossible with almost any other source of energy, which can be considered as CO2 free at the same time, which is an important consideration, corporate consideration that they are having.
You make a very good point. The idea of big tech, of course, we know the reason that these tech companies matter, not only because they're pursuing the AI development in the West on these models, the race for AGI, as it's called, requiring huge amounts of energy inputs, but they're also, for the moment at least, have sustainability goals, including net zero goals or beyond net zero.
Exactly.
In the case of one of the companies, that's leading them to fund lots of innovative clean energy projects. Historically, the U.S. market for clean energy renewables was developed by the very same big tech companies we're talking about through power purchase agreements, PPAs. That is the reason they finance projects that the banks would not finance in solar, for example, and wind and batteries. And so in that sense, there's a bit of a precedent. It's right to be skeptical. As a journalist, I'm skeptical about any companies making any claims, especially on the green side. But there is some credibility here. But in particular, because they also need the power, they're becoming something of a rich green uncle, I would argue, for some of the innovative new technologies.
Exactly.
We'll see how long that lasts. But this is not just existing wind and solar, but as you rightly pointed out, an example of nuclear with SMR. But we have fusion invested in as well by some of the same tech companies and energy companies.
Yeah, of course, in fusion we have an expert
we'll hear
here,
more about
although
that,
the IEA is, of course, the international institution dealing with fusion. But in terms of nuclear, it's interesting to say, although this is more of a nuclear angle, that because of this AI-nuclear relationship, I call it atoms for algorithms, you have one very clear example, maybe for the first time in the history of commercial use of nuclear power, where you have demand-driven nuclear. Because so far, when it comes to nuclear, this is changing because now we will even have naval propulsion and many other things that are going to be coming, but that is for other panels. But what we see is that the market is really pushing the nuclear sector, and the nuclear industry is really against the wall in a need to deliver, because of course they like the business, they enjoy it, but there is this huge demand that can only be satisfied by nuclear because of the characteristics of the AI industry that you are familiar with.
And to be precise about it, the demand for always-on, reliable, firm power, as well as, of course, emissions-free power. Right?
Exactly.
That's the dream, and that's something that is rare among clean energy sources. I would say that there are probably some hot rocks geothermal advocates who would say we are also in that game. And guess what? The leading companies in that area, Fervo and others that are making very rapid progress with this new innovative form of geothermal that is rapidly approaching commercialization, by combining methods from the oil and gas industry, fracking, multilateral drilling, and making geothermal available almost everywhere on Earth. I was out in Utah at the leading facility that Fervo has done. Google is one of their supporters, for example. Bill Gates is an investor. And so we're seeing another connection between the technology investors, but that can also be 24/7 firm, reliable power.
Absolutely.
That's emissions-free, right? So we're seeing an interesting convergence of industries where we might very well see sustainability goals and clean energy goals advanced by what generally gets spoken of in the headlines as a force for terrible things, consuming all our energy, raising our prices. In the year in which affordability is quite a challenge in politics around the world, especially the US, I think we'll find a lot of AI data centers being blamed for energy consumption. It is interesting to look at another aspect of that story, that is to say, could there be a leapfrogging in energy towards cleaner and more innovative alternatives that may come because, as I call them, rich green uncles are turning up, willing to fund infrastructure that historically, in developed countries, with zero electricity growth, basically flat load growth the last 20 years in the US and Europe as well, we have not seen significant investment in grid infrastructure, nor indeed in innovative sources. Although growth markets like China, like developing countries, have seen a very different pattern. And so we do see a bifurcation on the energy front. Now, we've talked specifically about fusion. You said the pressure's on the market-led guys. I think that's an opportunity to bring in the man under pressure here, who's developing one of the innovative fusion approaches. Francesco, you're founder, CEO of Proxima Fusion. There are dozens of fusion companies, something that would have seemed strange to say even 15, 20 years ago or 10 years ago. Yeah. And there's billions upon billions of dollars going into this from private sector capital. Mm-hmm. For those of us in this room who are not fusion experts, hands up if you are a fusion expert and really understand it and know what's going on. Hands up. Come on, don't be shy. Okay, literally no hands up for those who can't see. So in just a sentence or two, tell us how fusion works. Okay. And also, why is there so much interest, particularly from the private sector? Why now?
Yeah. First, I would say it's good news that nobody raised their hands, because fusion is a phenomenon. It's a physical phenomenon. It's not a technology per se. Being expert of all kinds of fusion is particularly challenging, I would say. But all the fusion companies, all the national labs, universities are working effectively on building a star in a laboratory in some form. It can be in a pulse manner, so it can be something like a combustion engine of sorts, or it can be something that is silent, buzzy, and keeps going, a bit similar to a fission power plant or a gas power plant. We are working on what is called the stellarator, so a donut-shaped device with twisty magnets. Effectively, it's a magnetic cage that tries to confine hot ionized matter at 100, 150 million degrees, which doesn't sound like something easy, and yet that is the easy part.
So you're building a glorified sauna.
You could put it that way, or a particularly complicated water boiler. At the end of the day, what we're trying to do is create heat, and that heat is heating up water, we make steam, and the steam moves the turbines. Right. And then there is a fantastic amount of knowledge that has been developed over longer than 100 years that we can leverage. The question is, how do you get that heat? How do you get those neutrons? There is a lot of knowledge also from the world of fission that becomes useful here. But some of the things that have been holding back fusion were not strictly technological so far. It was actually scientific. And what has happened over the last few years is that we've gone from being purely research-focused to, in several domains, finding that some abilities, some understanding on a scientific side, but also some technological enablers have allowed us to sidestep a little bit some of the challenges. And with some degree of boldness, several fusion companies are saying, we can actually go much faster than has been understood before. Well,
first of all, thank you for making that intelligible to the layman. So it is not always the case. I spend a lot of time with people in fusion, and I leave more confused than when I first started speaking with them. An important breakthrough you alluded to in the science happened at Livermore Labs in the United States, one of the U.S. national laboratories. And speaking with researchers there, it is not just the science that's been a breakthrough, and it's been replicated, it's peer-reviewed, published. They've been making continual advances, but also the engineering that's involved in that also, they're improving iteration by iteration by iteration. They're very excited about that approach, but that is big science, big infrastructure. I mean, we're talking massive, massive scale infrastructure that really requires, I would argue, government or strong government involvement. But there are also bottom-up startups and sort of a nimble cohort of competing agile companies. You're one of them. Tell us, what advantages do you small fry have when the big guns are there trying to do the same thing? In this case, literally big guns.
We had a great session with the director of Lawrence Livermore National Lab just earlier today, and we were agreeing on the fact that public-private partnerships are like this is the field where they need to show the value. It's not a field where you can get private money and try to do something in a couple of years and then run away in some way. It's also not a field where we want just national labs to work. The speed of venture-backed companies does help. The ability to bring in talent from the private sector to scale faster, to talk about manufacturing, not waiting for a supply chain to develop something, but actually drive that manufacturing at scale. That's the benefits. Unsurprisingly, the venture-backed startups are more aggressive oftentimes. They're trying to find ways to reduce the scale of some of these systems. I don't think fusion is going to be small in any realistic scenario for first-of-a-kind power plants. So we have to think at scale. We have to develop companies that can embrace that scale, that can develop an understanding of the supply chain, of the complexity of developing nuclear projects.
Just as a rule of thumb, are you thinking, and again, people may not follow gigawatts and terawatts, but on the scale of an existing combined cycle gas plant or coal plant or an existing conventional nuclear plant, what do you think is the right first generation that you're aiming for?
Around 500 megawatt electric. So
okay,
we've published a blueprint for a stellarator concept that we call Stellaris. Stellarators are these twisty donuts that we're working on. And that device is designed for 3 gigawatt thermal, which means around 1 gigawatt electric.
Right, so a centralized plant, not in the street corner. Some people talk about pocket fusion, but that's not, you think will not come
I'm not a strong believer of pocket fusion, and I think there is also no direct, it's not that in the small modular reactor story, I'm much more interested in the modular bit than the small, because our consumption is big. So the key question is, what is the overnight cost of building this thing? What's the levelized cost of electricity? But small per se is not actually necessary.
Right.
The feasibility is much more interesting in fusion as a question. So you can tell me that the thing is cheap, but if it doesn't work, it's not terribly helpful.
Okay, so you've brought us along on this journey here where fusion is a promising alternative. Connect the story to AI, which is the topic of our gathering, and why this can be an interesting, both maybe partial solution or part of the solution to the infrastructure challenge. And if you're using AI in what you're doing, let us know that as well. So there's some kind of virtuous cycle here.
Yeah, first, worth mentioning, AI, by attracting attention on the energy problem, is reminding the world of what we've known forever, which is that human progress is related to the availability of energy. For those of us that care about that energy being clean, that's particularly good tailwind for fusion, because fusion has long been appreciated to be the holy grail of clean energy. It's been a little far away. We've been doing research on this for a long time, but computation has really come to give us a big push. The stellarator concept that I work on is fundamentally simulation enabled. It was only when supercomputers became available in the, let's say, the 90s, that we learned to numerically optimize the strange shape of these plasmas, these hot ionized
I think they're trying to visualize it behind your head with this odd graphic that keeps twisting in like a odd-shaped donut. I wonder if he paid to have that done. But anyway, carry on.
But these shapes, they're simulation enabled, but part of the complexity of building these things is the integrated nature of this ecosystem of technology. So you have your 150 million degrees plasma, and about a meter away, you have a cryogenic system working at, say, minus 270 degrees, give or take. So that's the highest temperature gradient in the universe. And it takes support structures, it takes a cryogenic system, it takes microwave systems, and simulation, integrated systems, and AI come to simplify the speed at which you can iterate. The place where we're going is where these designs are not the limit in speed, where we can get them on the spot. If you've invested in the right data infrastructure, you have the right kind of simulation tools, you are in a domain where that physical simulation has already been researched enough. If you're in vague space, it's not quite at the point where AI is going to discover the physical laws. But if in some domains of fusion, I would claim, we do have that physical basis that lets us focus on engineering, and that's why AI, I think, is going to give its very best in this understanding of trade-offs between physics, engineering, and economics.
And this is, you're seeing this in real time?
Yeah, I mean, the kind of concept of the stellarator is enabled by simulation. So we don't go out and say we can throw all the buzzwords about AI native and so on, but the reality is there are tailwinds on same as every engineering company, on AI for coding, the ability to integrate, to bring all the different disciplines at the same time. And then there are less obvious things, like understanding, having a system that doesn't only drive automation of your design process, but actually automated decision-making at small scale. Right now, we are still, I would claim, on the small scale. There is still very much a human behind an understanding of the intricacies. But this, I think, is one of the things that should make us all think, things that look like they've been 10 years away, 15 years away, in deep tech in general.
Right.
The tailwinds are such that I would bet happily against anyone actually saying how many years it's going to take us to get to a first of a kind. The speed of iteration in silico is way faster than I think the vast majority of people understand.
The future is coming faster than you think, maybe, because AI is acting as an accelerant in this way. But also, and I want to turn to Fred for this, this makes it closer to the day. Again, fusion is one of the alternatives. We're fortunate enough to have some experts on the panel, but the multiple innovations coming in energy technologies feed into this acceleration towards a future where we can apply AI. So there's two halves to this equation: how we make the AI, how we use the AI. People tend to focus on the first and look at the negative consequences generally, and rightly so that we make sure to do it the right way. But what I find is that the more you look at the potential uses for AI in sustainability or in other aspects of applications, AI for good, that there's enormous potential. And the question for you, Fred, is tell us a little bit about AI for good, the organization, but also how do we make sure that AI is used mostly for good? Now, you can't, all new technologies that are breakthroughs are multi-purpose technologies, double-edged swords, but how do we tilt in the direction of good?
Yeah, thank you for the introduction, and very happy to be here with the panelists. So AI for Good was created in 2017. And if you think about it, that's basically an eternity in terms of AI years, because AI is moving so quickly. And we've seen the evolution from traditional AI, machine learning, to generative AI, the rise of AI agents, and the more physical manifestations of AI that you now see in the form of robotics, embodied AI, brain-computer interfaces, and even space computing. And I'll get to that in a second. So it was built on the premise that AI has great promise to basically solve many global challenges, where you're looking at affordable healthcare, clean energy, food security, disaster response, education for all. I think the use cases are definitely there. You probably heard them in all the panels. But how do you make sure that a high potential use case works equally well on men or women, on persons with different skin colors, on children or the elderly, persons with disabilities, or in low resource settings where basic things that we take for granted, like electricity, 5G, access to data, cloud, AI, are real concerns. So these are not always natural reflexes for the fast-moving tech and startup industry. I think the track record so far has been build it and we'll fix it later. But these are things that we think very deeply about in AI for Good. So the goal of AI for Good, simply put, is how can we unlock AI's potential to serve humanity? And how can we do this? Well, first of all, we can't do this alone. So we have 50-plus sister UN agencies, including the IAEA, as partners of AI for Good. And as an example, we've had a long partnership with IAEA where we've had a programming track on AI and energy and looking at how AI can accelerate research and progress towards fusion, but also looking at how nuclear science can help in areas like healthcare research, for example. And on the dual nature of AI, I have one interesting example. So in AI for Good, we have an innovation factory. That's a year-long AI startup pitching competition. And there's actually a, a startup from Estonia that can basically detect how much sugar is in your blood just by analyzing your voice on a mobile phone. And the reason they're doing that is because diabetes is a global killer. Blood sugar monitoring tools are very expensive. Pricking is inconvenient. There's a whole range of nasty issues linked with diabetes. So this could be a game changer for diabetes, right? But if AI can tell how much sugar is in your blood, what else can it tell about you? You know, how many drinks did you have last night? Sorry. Are you tired? Are you lying? Are you paying attention? Actually, are you paying attention? So there you have the dual nature of AI.
This is AI House. There are scanners that are watching, and there
exactly.
will be a quiz afterward.
Facial
or else
recognition.
You don't get the drinks.
Yeah. So that's what you're saying, the dual nature of AI. Just because AI could do something doesn't mean it should do something. So AI for Good is very much about making sure we steer it in the right direction, and again, with our different partners. And one thing you said, I mean, I agree, the energy demands of AI are insatiable. I think we're not going to get around that, and we're going to need all the help we can get, whether it's nuclear or sustainable energy, and I don't think it's going to be one solution. It's going to be many solutions working together.
Indeed.
But I would like maybe another show of hands. How many people here are experts in space computing? Okay, good.
Well, define your terms. You mean data centers in space or something else?
Yes, yeah, pretty much.
Still no hands, but go on.
I don't think anyone is. I mean, this is a new, and I'm not either, but I'm going to try and demystify it for you. Just before Christmas, you probably heard CEOs of NVIDIA and Tesla and Google talking about putting data centers in space. But they're not going to pick up a data center and fly it in space. The thinking behind it is if you look at a data center, most of the mass of a data center is dedicated towards cooling and energy. Like the chips are actually quite small. It's like a tiny part of a data center. So if you can put those chips on constellations of satellites and put them in space where you have 24-hour solar power, that's about 30% more bright than on Earth. And on the flip side, you can put a radiator, I mean, you have a cooling of space. Well, you've kind of solved the energy piece. But also you would connect these constellations of satellites by laser. And the only thing faster than a laser in a fiber optic cable is a laser in a vacuum in space. So there are a lot of good arguments on why you would want to have a distributed constellation of satellites running edge AI chips connected by laser in space. That's the energy part, right? And this is still a pilot phase. I'm not saying this is going to happen here now today. But ITU's just launched a challenge where we do have a mini constellation which has AI, edge AI on the chips. And not talking about energy here, but why it's important is the Earth is probably, there's terabytes of photographs generated of the Earth every day. But probably about 80% of those photographs are not usable because of cloud cover and all that. It takes a long time to send it down. It takes a long time to process these photos. So for example, in the context of climate modeling or disaster management or agriculture, it's really useful, but it could be a game changer. If you can process these images on the satellite itself using AI and beam it down to Earth via laser, you're talking about usable images that are transmitted in near real time versus many, many hours the traditional way. So if you have a typhoon or a hurricane coming or you have a drought or whatever, I think those minutes versus hours is a game changer for disaster preparedness, for example.
Fred, that's actually a counterintuitive point. People might think latency would be the issue if your data center is in space. You're making flipping that argument on its head here.
It could be faster. There's a lot of technical challenges that need to work out, a lot of standards that need to be developed. That's why ITU is also a standard-setting body, and I think industry will figure this out because there's a need. But yeah, this space challenge is basically going to open up the photographs and data on this mini constellation of satellites running edge AI to students and researchers all around the world, including developing countries. And then hopefully that would be a practical example of AI for good, where you're solving the good part and maybe in the process helping to advance the energy part in space as well.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to come to audience questions in a minute, and I may even ask and call out someone in the audience who might know something about this. The head of the World Economic Forum's expert groups, the Global Future Council on Energy Technologies, happens to be here, and I happen to have the privilege of serving under him on that fetching water and doing paper clips, as it were, for that GFC. And so this topic has come up on our council, so we may hear a little bit from our expert from the National Renewable Energy Laboratories in the U.S. But and to collect your thoughts, I want to do one quick further round, just picking up on what you gave, a specific example. I'm going to ask each of the two of my remaining panelists, again, thinking about bridging the gap between any particular technology to the broader topic of AI and critical infrastructure, something concrete that you think we should do or can do, or an obstacle that should be swept away so that we can accelerate the path for AI, hopefully for good.
From the point of view of nuclear, this is a nuclear industry-specific issue. It's not an AI issue. AI is saying, hey guys, deliver. We are here, we have the money, speed it up. So my answer would take the discussion into another direction, if you wish, because it's a matter of how we speed up deployment of SMRs, small modular reactors. Basically, not only those, but this is basically what the big AI companies, as you know, have in mind. This is what they want: have their own SMR, if you want, which is going to be absolutely 100% dedicated to them in their needs, in their specific needs. So the issue here is to get the right designs. We are involved because, of course, there are normative safeguards issues, there are safety issues, there are things that, all of this is fantastic, but you have to have it within a framework, as we do with fission and fusion in the future, and we have the World Fusion Energy Group, and we are there to foster, to facilitate with sister organizations all of this activity in a way that is feasible at the end of the day. And so when it comes to giving the AI impetus what it needs, I think it's a matter of this industry delivering. Nuclear industry delivering. This is why, we had in December the first ever AI nuclear conference in Vienna. And so, I made it a conference where the private sector would have a prominent role. It was not, just international civil servants and nuclear regulators talking amongst themselves. So we had, all these names I mentioned before. And this is the sense. And so the issue here, the key issue here for the AI industry and the concern that they have is how fast. When are we going to have, and this is the question I have everywhere I go, when are we going to see the first SMRs rolled out in the market so that this process can start in earnest? And the answer is within 5 years or perhaps even less. We do have SMRs in Russia, in China at the moment. We are going to be seeing the first ones in the West, or the wide concept of West.
Okay, well, you heard it here. 5 years or less.
Or less.
Or less.
Or less. I mean, already this year you're going to see in the United States, again, sorry, this is getting more political, but you've seen President Trump's executive orders and how he is putting, and the government is putting a lot of pressure on the nuclear industry. There is a desire to regain a certain leadership.
Energy dominance is the phrase.
Exactly. I didn't want to use that word, but let's say, that they have some advantage. But actually, we see in Canada, Darlington project moving very, very fast. And of course, it's an issue of licensing. Right. Licensing is a big issue for us in nuclear. We are a very regulated, heavily regulated industry, and rightly so, by the way. The thing is to make regulation faster than it has been in the past.
Yeah. So, and interestingly, AI itself is helping accelerate the process of work at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission.
That is an interesting point. Yes.
And companies applying as well, getting through the thicket of paperwork.
Yes, because the question that is being put by political decision makers is, well, what is happening? Why is it not moving as fast as it should?
Right.
And so in traditional fission, as you know, licensing could take years in some cases. And so there is a lot of soul search in the nuclear industry about what has been happening in the past. But I don't want to move the discussion into nuclear energy, but as an enabler.
As an enabler, exactly. And just a final note before I come for a final word from you, Francesco, and that is we've all walked past Palantir House, some more briskly than others, others perhaps going in to do business or get a cocktail with some trepidation. Palantir, among the many things that they are doing, is actually working with companies in the nuclear space. The Nuclear Company is a startup that's trying to do 6 packs of nuclear, that is getting economies of scale through multiple order books of nuclear power. But what they're doing is the construction of nuclear, the blocking and tackling. What the EPC contractors would do typically had been stick-built, meaning cost-plus contracts. Imagine defense-style contracts where who knows, cost overruns or normal years delay, trying to find ways to automate and accelerate and make more intelligent that process, getting really in the weeds. And so there's some interesting work and efficiencies that can be gained from applying AI today so that that energy can come on sooner, ultimately to power AI itself. So there's a possibility here of seeing a virtuous cycle. Francesco.
You preempted my point. I think that is one of the most interesting things that make the whole field a little pragmatic. Very exciting things are happening, creating surrogate models of things that used to take 100 million CPU hours and now take a millisecond. That is important. But I think on top of that, there is stuff about infrastructure, about licensing, about deployment, about manufacturing, about quality of how do you check that you manufacture the thing you thought you checked. And this, I think, it gets a lot less attention. But eventually, once you get to feasibility of a system, Fusion being in the R&D phase, we're showing that we can make enough power to really make it commercially compelling. A limit to how fast we can go is these applications of simulation, AI, computational statistics, to the practical questions of why can't you make it faster?
Right.
That is a really interesting example. There are lots of interesting startups being created. Some of the largest corporates have realized that this is a transformational domain. And I think that's another one of those tailwinds that make the impossible become much closer day by day in deep tech.
Terrific. Okay, well, I think that's a good jumping off point. Let's see, we have a microphone here. Am I right? Is that our only microphone? Yeah. Okay, let's see. I did give an opportunity in the back for my chairman of my GFC. Let's see if, a couple of ground rules, I should say. Please stand up, wait for the microphone, and as well, identify yourself and your affiliation, and make it a question rather than a long-winded speech. Nobody likes gas bags, Doug. But please, tell us who you are, sir.
Doug Arendt. I'm co-chair of the GFC Global Futures Council on Emerging Energy Technologies. So maybe because I had two questions, but to the nuclear developers, two different flavors. You've mentioned some things about how AI is helping speed up innovation from idea to market. What else needs to be done? That's one. And then Frederic, I have a real question for you, which is AI has application, particularly to power grids. And you didn't mention that as a good opportunity. What can or should be done to use AI to get more out of our existing grids or to envision and enable future grids which are resilient, robust, abundant, affordable, and clean?
Great. Okay, well, I gave you a special dispensation to ask two questions. No one else get any funny ideas about asking two. But let's start with the first, and then we'll come to Fred second on the grid question. Any takers? You've been challenged.
Well, as I said, in terms of what needs to happen, AI, this is like a circular thing, because AI needs nuclear, and nuclear needs AI. And what we see now in terms of, for example, design, how with AI tools, sounds quite evident, but I will say it anyways. With AI, we are gaining, tremendous amounts of design hours. In operation as well, predictive maintenance, things of this kind that make nuclear design more nimble and faster. When you look at, and again, I am drifting into the SMR problematic, but it is relevant to this. In terms of SMRs, we have around 80 designs that are out there, of what perhaps 8 will see the light of the day, commercially speaking, as a viable option. And there has been historically a tendency in nuclear design to go back to the drawing board quite frequently, which has taken a lot of time. And this is one of the things that some people, especially those who do not like nuclear, they say it's too long, etc. So AI has been a tremendous boost, as Francesco was saying. This gives you all of a sudden, a big push. So for us, it's like a virtuous circle,
right?
That is engaged.
Great. Thank you. Fred, let's come to you. You were challenged to say, why not it's not just drill, baby, drill. It's not just about supply. Anybody who's got a hammer thinks everything is a nail. We can also perhaps apply AI to the grid to manage it more effectively, more efficiently. What say you to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you look at the AI for Good programming, everyone knows us for our summit in July, but we actually run online events almost every working day of the year all around the world. And there you'll find many use cases from the likes of Google, Microsoft, but also different cities and mayors. And basically, I think one of the most high potential applications of AI is optimization and efficiency. And basically, by using these algorithms to squeeze the most out of whatever problem you're trying to solve. So we've seen a lot of really good use cases on that. And especially from the likes of Google and Microsoft, where they're using their own AI to reduce the energy consumption of their data centers while the demands are increasing. So I think it's a bit of a cat and mouse game. But also, I don't think you should take their word for it as such. So ITU being a standard-setting organization, we actually have standards developed on the management of energy consumption in data centers. So it's basically a framework for assessing, measuring, and benchmarking energy management of data centers. And it's a bit of a cliche, but if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So on the flip side, in our standard setting work, you have a framework for measuring this. And also seeing lots of other applications on battery development. And last but not least, I think there's like two holy grails. There's fusion and there's also quantum. And we've seen a lot of the use cases where a lot of the tough to crack problems that have been slowing down your progress are being accelerated by AI in the form of material science or reducing errors in quantum. And so you're seeing this kind of like, 1 + 1 = 3 in terms of speed. And with that, I'm quite optimistic as well. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. I see a lot of hands there, so let's get the microphone. We'll come to the lady here that I see, and then we'll go, I think, a little behind behind the pillar. There we go. Again, identify yourself, make it a question.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. I wear multiple hats, so I'm going to try to be brief. I'm a former UN legal advisor.
What's your name?
Benedetta Audia.
Welcome.
I'm a professor of UN and World Bank procurement at GW, and now I am the principal of international development. A question, I guess, for all of you. It's about governance and accountability and possibly over-reliance on a smaller number of AI suppliers. I'd like to have your thoughts on how we can avoid over-dependency on just a few number of suppliers in this space in relation to critical infrastructure. And with respect to governance and accountability, just a very quick one.
Yeah.
Who's ultimately accountable if these systems fail, since we're moving from a system where AI was in a support role rather than a semi-autonomous decision-making? Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you. A question about really governance, guardrails. Who wants to take that on?
Maybe I start by saying these tools for us, they help us go faster. There is no decision to be trusted by an AI that is not fundamentally with a human behind all of it. Maybe I add personal opinion, we do need AI companies that are nicely distributed, that we understand that we can rely on. I'm a big believer that Europe, for example, also needs its own AI foundational model companies.
Nothing to do with the fact that you're a European startup.
Nothing at all.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Good. I mean, people tend to talk about the great race between the U.S. and China. So it is. I strongly support your point that we need to, and we can look at India, we can look at other places as well. There are multiple poles emerging of innovation. So that's one way to answer your question, to have diversity in the competition itself, bottom up. But surely there's also a point about, we have two people involved, ITU and IAEA, at the global regulatory level. I'm sure there is a role, and you are all looking carefully at that, and that will emerge, presumably. So let's go to the question behind the pillar. I'm sorry, I can't see you from here.
Hi,
welcome.
It's
yes.
Kristen Panarelli. I work in the energy sector, ex-World Economic Forum. Energy security is a big theme these days, and the weaponization of energy.
We hadn't noticed.
Yeah. How will AI and critical infrastructure make us safer or not?
Okay.
Well, I can say something about that in the sense that I fully agree with you that energy security has emerged as a big problem. And there I will fully and proudly wear my nuclear energy hat, because one of the factors that have are inclining many countries to look into nuclear is the autonomy it gives, is the independency it gives, especially if you look at countries that are doubling down on nuclear and trying to augment their percentage of nuclear capacity. You will see a lot in Eastern Europe. And this has a fundamental reason in what has been happening since 2022. So I think energy security is one of the drivers. There are many drivers about nuclear, including climate and other things. But energy security has for sure been one of the main drivers of this clear regain of interest in nuclear energy.
Let me take a quick straw poll before our next question. Just based on what we know now, which is obviously imperfect information, if I give a 10-year window, 10 years from now we reconvene and we have a session like this, how many of you believe that AI and its proliferation and its uses will have enhanced energy security? And the opposite, I'll ask, how many of you think it will have diminished energy security with all the consequences we can think about? And vote one way or the other. Let's make it a forced vote, just to get a sense of how people feel. How many of you feel, if I give you 10 years, AI will actually make the energy system more secure? Hands up. Wave them high, be proud. It's nothing wrong with being optimistic. Okay, how many of you don't think that? How many of you think it will make us more insecure or less secure? Okay, this room's actually fairly divided up, maybe 60-40 in favor of more likely to be positive. So that's very interesting, just to take a pulse. I had given the microphone to a patient lady here in the stripes, and then I want to come to the back, so people in the back, make yourself known. Go ahead.
Hello, my name's Tammy McKenzie. I'm the director of the Ola Fellowship. We're a think tank in AI. Please don't hate me, I do have two questions, but the first one's longer than the second.
Well, pick your best question.
Well, it's this. It's for Dr. Grossi, I'm so sorry. Grossi, I don't know how to pronounce it.
Grossi, yes. Grossi, Italian.
Thank you. That was the main question, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for your question. We were all wondering.
Thank you. Asked the right question. We were all curious.
Yeah.
What can we learn from the successes and failures of atomic governance for AI governance? And the second question is the environmentalist question, which I will ask. What are we doing for spent fuel? So
okay.
There you go.
All right.
That might be yes, no. Have we solved it? Yeah.
Well, nuclear governance is very different from, first of all, there's a whole debate about AI governance, and we have been working on that. I'm quite skeptical about that. But in terms of nuclear...
You're skeptical that it should happen or that it will happen? Or that it can even happen at all?
Well, I don't think it's needed in the way that it has been discussed.
Right, okay.
And I say it because many people ask me, because people have been saying that the IEA could be a model for AI verification. And frankly speaking, there is a huge difference. Nuclear governance is based on nuclear material, is based on certain activities, is based on a technology. AI is completely different in this sense. That doesn't mean that there shouldn't be some rules of the game or rules, generally indicating what you need to do or what you need to avoid. But I think this analogy, people might tend to believe that we would love to see we are the model, we are the example, and I say it's a different beast you're dealing with when you talk about nuclear energy or fusion. There's a big debate, as you know, about how you regulate fusion as opposed to fission, right? So nuclear energy generation is very tangible, all right, very physical. It is there. It is a matter of material balance and accountancy, all right? I do not think you can translate that into the domain. Fusion is debatable, some parts of it, but certainly AI, it also depends on the model you have in mind.
You make a profound point, actually, one that's not often clarified on public stages. There's such a difference between things you can drop on your foot versus things that are somewhat more ethereal, like cloud models and things that we haven't even invented yet.
Exactly, it's more behavioral.
Never mind super intelligence. Should we get there?
In AI, it would be more behavioral.
But do you think there are some models we have dealt with, say, bio weapons or CRISPR, or there are other technologies, the Asilomar process? Is there some international framework? Geoengineering, we're not even allowed to do science, or else you'll be protested. What's the model to think about?
Excellent point. Some years ago, I've been dealing with weapons of mass destruction for most of my life, including biological weapons,
Right.
biological and toxic weapons. And I'm sorry, this is a little bit of a diversion, but since you raised
give us some knowledge
and at
here.
some point, there is a treaty like the NPT for nuclear, but it's the BWC, the Biological Weapons Convention. And at some point, there was a big push to try to set up a verification mechanism for that. So people like me, diplomats, were negotiating a treaty and a protocol to verify this, and it never happened because we came collectively to the realization, and we had scientists in the room, and it was a very serious discussion that you would end up, verifying refrigerators all over the world. So it is certain things do not lend themselves to the model of safeguarding the atom, which has been, of course, is very tempting, because in the universe of verification, nuclear was the first. And it was, think about the 1950s, all right? And so there was this enthusiasm and fear in some, and preoccupation in others, but there was a high-end technology that was there, and then we came up with something to verify and to check. So people say, well, we have the IEA, why couldn't we have the IAI, whatever, that will be dealing with that? But it's unrealistic. I think we have to, it's an issue to be tackled, but in a different way.
And it may become even more challenging if instead, as the questioner from the front asked about concentration of companies, at the moment it's a handful of Silicon Valley companies, but if we see a dispersed model, a distributed model of AI generation as being pioneered in China and elsewhere, then you might find it almost impossible to manage and regulate in the nuclear model. So your point is very well taken. Let's go to the back. I think, is there a question there? Do I see a hand? Or maybe it's been answered in the process. Let's come to the gentleman in the middle, and we'll work our way forward again. We just have a couple of minutes, so short question, short answer, gentlemen.
Hi, my name is Christoph Zeng. I'm the founder of worldai.org, and this is exactly what I've been trying to do for the past 2 years. The real problem I've been encountering is that who pays? And
did you say who pays?
Yeah, who pays?
Pays for what?
If there's an organization, such an organization, and
a governance organization.
A governance organization. I
sure.
Have even the name is there.
Okay, yeah, I like it. Short and sharp question. Yeah. Who would pay for such a thing? It wouldn't be the industry.
And
they don't want regulation. They want a Wild West, surely.
Well, if you were to set up, first of all, you would need a political will to do that. That doesn't exist. Number one, sorry. But if it happened, I mean, the idea in itself is worthy of consideration, and I think it's, but if it happened, you would need an X number of countries. It would be the taxpayer, basically, as it happens with them, with us. It's a matter of assessed contributions. This is, unless you have an industry-driven organization, but here you don't have the legal the legal power to enforce any normative behavior there. It would be an association, private type, sort of.
One last quick question. I think I saw a hand here, and really we just have 2 minutes, so 30-second question, 30-second answer.
Perfect. Very quickly, I'm a journalist. I work for Montel. I'm Italian as well, Edina Trabattoni. Disclaimer.
Yeah.
You said it was said that the nuclear industry is against a wall to deliver. Could you give a realistic timeline for new nuclear capacity in gigawatt that Europe needs, but that could actually be built realistically in order to satisfy both AI demand and traditional power demand, and by when?
Well, we are behind the curve. According to our estimations, from now to 2050, maybe you will have 2.5 capacity, increase. There is a political commitment to triple.
25, correct?
2050.
Oh, 50, sorry. Yeah.
2050. There is a political commitment to triple. Many countries are signing up.
This came out of COP28, I believe. And
that started there, correct?
Started there.
And then people are, adding up. Yeah. I think this political commitments, this give a political indication of intent. Whether that is going to happen or not is another. This is why at the IEA we are bound to be objective. So maybe the World Nuclear Association, the industry will say, well, we're going to quadruple. But we're trying to look at it with an objective perspective. And what we see, and how do we measure that? Orders, projects, ongoing, also political announcements, etc., some industrial and technological considerations, is that we are not going to be at the level that we should be. Which is perhaps triple or quadruple.
Yeah. So
what we have now.
Right. Well, we can have a longer discussion on numbers after the session's over, because I have to bring this meeting to a close. We're just about out of time. But I will say, using the chairman's prerogative to give the last word, the idea that we're going to have a demand, a need, an opportunity to have more clean, firm power in the future, clearly that's there. I don't think I need to say that at AI House, that the demand will be there. Whether nuclear and which flavor of nuclear and how much of it can be delivered, I would posit is not going to be a function of government good intentions or forecasts from however excellent the caliber of the forecasters. Let us remember, consistently, almost every forecaster got the forecast wrong for the most significant contributor to new energy generation, electricity generation, which is solar. The wrong way, meaning undercounting. IEA, private sector, Greenpeace, all the forecasts have been wrong by undercounting the pace of exponential growth. And so, but that tells me it's the pace not only of the combination of government intent and policies, but also technological innovation, entrepreneurship, scaling, manufacturing excellence. All the things that we've heard bits and bobs about are now coming into what has been traditionally a stodgy industry the last few decades. Let's be honest, nuclear. So I would say watch from the bottom up rather than top-down prognostications to figure this out. So on that note, I will leave you, and I ask you to give a round of applause for my wonderful panelists, and enjoy the rest of Davos. Thank you all very much.